Hi, everyone. It's Wednesday, April 27th, and we are back for our next session of Discovering Buddhism, Transforming Problems with Venerable Amy Miller. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you, Venerable Amy, for being with us. And I'll hand things over to you to get us started.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Chen Ling Center, and Cindy, Venerable Carol, everybody that has made this possible. And thank you to all of you for showing up. It's interesting. I keep seeing various friends from around the country. I'm just seeing my dear friends in LA, David and Liesel. And when I see you guys, I keep being like, okay, I'm coming down to visit. I can't wait. I'm overdue, but it'll be a nice reunion, no doubt. No doubt. Anyway, thank you so much. I just had just a question to begin is, how was your week, for one? And any idea with, and I'm just going to read for a moment. We were looking at the 8 verses. I just want to clean up my screen here. Oh, goodness. Make it easier here. Okay. I just want to read. If you can just relax, close your eyes for a minute. I just want to read these first few verses we've been dealing with. And just settle yourself into a comfortable posture. Find that extension for the spine. And just allow your breathing to deepen. As you slowly let go of the distractions of the day, and upon an inhalation, bringing in space to any places you notice where you're holding tension in the body. Open up that space in those places. Every exhalation, releasing some of that tension as much as possible. Just think about your purpose for being here right now and how we can shift a self-serving purpose. Because certainly we would like to ourselves personally to get something out of this time. But can we use this information to help our everyday lives when problems arise? And be able to apply some of the information that you might get from these sessions? Can they help counter the delusion of where the problem roots? Can they help us see the problem in a different way? Applying perhaps appropriate antidotes that help to subdue that problem, but on a deeper level, that help to transform your mind from one that is afraid of problems that is shutting down or folding in or lashing out when there's problems. Using the problem to transform your mind. Like polishing a gem. The mind comes in rough in the beginning. We begin to notice there's some gleaming facets there beneath the crust, beneath the dirt. We apply some abrasive materials, the problem, to it, and it begins to wash away, to scrub away those delusions. The less than generous commentary we layer on ourselves again and again and again. So maybe that's part of your motivation to help that transformation take place. Let's think about that for a minute. If I can transform my mind and really transform it in a grand way to get rid of all the delusions permanently, delusions gross and subtle, then maybe I have a bigger ability to help others do the same thing. So feel free, if you'd like, to include that in your motivation, this thought of what I can do for others in a bigger hearted, more spacious minded way. And take a moment to set your motivation. Let's just think about these few verses we have been through so far, verses 1 to 3, and just reflect as you're sitting here in meditation. The 8 verses of mind training, determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. I hold them most dear at all times. When in the company of others, I shall hold myself the lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart hold others dear and supreme. Vigilant the moment a delusion appears in my mind, endangering myself and others, I shall confront and avert it without delay. Just focused on those 3 verses right now. Quick comment. And please relax, you can open your eyes. I'm just curious. Any thoughts, any experiences this week thinking about these 3 verses? If you thought about them? Even as I mention them now, anything rising up for you that you can relate to your last week? And for instance, here's a few ideas. How's your pride going? Is that something you suffer from? How's your self-cherishing going? Is that something you suffer from? Is that something that bothers you at all? Any comments? Feel free.
Amy,
Carol.
oh, Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No problem.
when you were talking about, well, it's lovely to reflect on the three verses, but I think one of the things that's been coming up for me repeatedly is every morning looking at the news and sort of what's happened, and crazy things happening around the world. And I guess I was thinking more from the side of depression and how prevalent, it's kind of natural to feel like, oh, my gosh, there's no hope. And then these verses really help to, thinking about transforming the mind. So,
Right, right. And also we'd done a Tonglen meditation in one of the early sessions. So that's something when I'm faced with news that's pretty bleak. And it's not just news, but a number of us, especially as you grow older, you're encountering a number of friends with serious illness. I don't know if that's the case that you're finding, but I'm finding that. So you can't do anything to fix it. And sometimes it can be depressing and it can be alarming, the strain people are under. And so I find then I just do Tonglen meditation. So again, that was the giving and taking meditation. So we were doing it first in relation to yourself. And then you want to expand slowly with different beings that you think about. You can put the person in front of you. You can think of Ukraine and think of the beings in Ukraine. And what you're doing is you're taking their suffering, imagining, but people get alarmed and scared by that. I don't want suffering. Okay. I don't want suffering, but you're using it to imagine that knot again here at your heart, constricted knot of your selfishness. That's what we're harming with it. That's the only thing it harms. So again and again, as I breathe in, and we did that exercise of just focusing on the breathing in, taking from the beings I'm thinking about as they exhale, I take that suffering on, okay, and just let it chip away at your self-cherishing. Okay? So as I chip away at the selfishness, the self-cherishing, I end up with a more spacious mental experience. Because the only thing that gets in the way of that is your selfishness, your self-absorption. So then I'm going to, if I can, as I exhale, I'm going to offer to all those beings, whoever I want to think about, whether it's a front visualization of myself, because I need some self-care, whether it's a difficult colleague, whether it's Putin or people in Ukraine, or you want to offer them all the happiness like that. So it's a great exercise, Tonglen. It's a very profound meditation that I find very, very helpful. Because first of all, it leaves an imprint in my mind of that practice. It leaves an imprint in my mind of that thought process. To take somebody's suffering and offer your happiness, I mean, it's radically opposite what our civilization's doing. This is again why it was a secret method. And I just want to go back for a second. Bodhicitta. Okay, this term I've talked about before, bodhicitta. So bodhi, enlightenment. Okay, chitta, mind. Okay, the mind of enlightenment. What's the mind of enlightenment? Right, to benefit all living beings. Right, to become a Buddha, to benefit all living beings is the mind of enlightenment. Okay, so bodhicitta, mind of enlightenment, the enlightened attitude, and it all encompasses compassion, cherishing others more than yourself, empathy, taking care of others. Okay, but the essence is to get enlightened, to become fully conscious, enlightened, omniscient, all-knowing, Buddha mind, right? Because then you're unlimited in helping others. So, but along the way, we help at the level that we can. It's not like I'm going to say I'm waiting till I'm a Buddha, I can't help. You help along the way. So this concept, bodhicitta, this term, again in Buddhism, there's two main methods to develop it in our tradition. One was prevalently taught, called the 7-point cause and effect method. 7-point cause and effect method to develop bodhicitta. The second method is called equalizing and exchanging self with others. That was a secret method. It was secret because it's so radical to think of, it includes Tonglen. And so radical to think of taking on suffering, taking on others' suffering and giving them happiness. Okay? So again, it's not something I directly talk to non-Buddhists about because I don't know if they'd understand. But once you're on this path, or once you're interested in a spiritual path, There's much you can do with Tonglen. And if you're just patterning your mind with that, and that's the only spiritual practice you do in this life, but when you're dying, if you have that thought arise, let's say, because I have cancer, okay, well, let me take on all the people, all the cancer of all the people in the world, because I have cancer anyway, you might say. Let me take it on right now and let them be free and let them have all the good health I've ever had. And I'm going to use that idea of taking on the cancer as I inhale from all those beings. I'm going to use it to reduce my self-cherishing. You die in that moment, I don't think it's too bad for your mind. So it can be very, very helpful. So I just want to mention those two methods again. So important related to this class. So let's do the refuge prayer. If we may, Gina, thank you, just to get ourselves a little bit, just standard prayer that we often do at the beginning of classes. And let's think about the words again. Again, I want to become enlightened, it says. I go for refuge. I basically am seeking shelter in Buddhism because it helps me get enlightened. So there's an initial refuge talking about, all the suffering we go through, all the other options of dying with the mind not in the right state. So I need protection. That's what refuge is. And I'm going to take refuge until I'm enlightened. Who? In Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Okay, historical Buddha, we know, enlightened being, but on another level, the omniscient mind. And then the Dharma are the teachings, but on another and ultimate level, teachings on emptiness. We're going to talk about that today. Supreme Assembly is the Sangha, spiritual community, maybe monks and nuns. Okay, on an ultimate level, those who've had a direct perception of emptiness. Okay? So the reason we take refuge in them is once you start exploring their qualities, they can protect us from more suffering. And you have to check up on your mind. What protects you from more suffering? And what are your coping mechanisms when you get into trouble? Because some of them are not that healthy, but we have a habit of doing them. So we do them again and again, right? But what about Buddha, Dharma, Sangha? We consider that and begin to explore those qualities. So we want to have that in our heart, okay? And then from the merits of listening to the Dharma, I want to become a Buddha, but the real reason, again, to benefit all sentient beings. So let's recite this. We'll do it twice in the English and then once in the Tibetan phonetics. Feel free to join if you'd like. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. O Sangye Chodan Soki Cho Namla Chanchu Badu De Nigyab Suchi Kyagi Chiningi Peso Namgi Drola Pencher Sangye Drupajo. Thank you, Gina. We're going to go back into meditation. So please sit comfortably. This is meditation 2 from the materials related to this course that we started last week, transforming problems into happiness. Just find that comfortable posture for your body. And again, it's perfectly fine to sit in a chair. Just have your feet straight down if you can, or a cross-legged posture if you have enough room and you're comfortable. And just bring your awareness to your breath for a moment to settle the mind. And remember, just for one moment, the purpose of this meditation. So it's very important to think in detail of the benefits of problems. Okay? The benefits of problems. Again, I know this is radical, okay? But since this is the main method, okay, of generating increasingly great strength and determination, okay, this thought of liking, okay, you ready? That which is generally regarded as miserable. Okay, this is completely reverse thinking. Okay. And it takes a lot of strength and determination to keep your mind focused on problems at times. But it has an incredibly transformative effect on your mind for the benefit, for beneficial purposes. So again, recognizing undesirable situations as desirable, okay, is one of the most powerful thought training practices you can do. This is how you transform suffering into happiness. So problems are going to exist because we're in samsara. Okay, that's a given. They're going to come. How are you working with them? Do you have the tools to work with them? Okay, so let's just try our best. And here's a great preliminary exercise that is in this meditation. It comes along with what's called the 4 immeasurable prayers. They're included in this meditation. So if you have a look this week, it'd be really, really helpful for you to really focus on this meditation. We were doing part of it last week. This week, really focus on these 4 immeasurable prayers that are on page 5. We will remind you, okay? They're called immeasurable because it's about countless living beings. We're not restraining ourselves and wishing these things just for the people we like. You really want to send them out in a big way to all beings, if you can. You just think about that. And the other thing is, we don't want to limit the type of prayers we're sending out. So when it says 4 immeasurables, okay, they're divided into, as we do them in this order: immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. So you don't want to limit those experiences. You want to think of them as immeasurable. So let's just right now, considering all the beings we can, whether those closest to us, those across the world in Ukraine or somewhere else, let's really send these wishes out to them. And if you'd like, you could visualize light rays coming out of your heart center, streaming out of all the pores of your body to all these beings everywhere. Just think of these prayers right now. And in your own practice, when you do this, if you want to recite out loud, fantastic. If not, that's fine. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings had happiness and the causes of happiness. Just think of that over and over in your mind. This is wishing them immeasurable love. Send that out from your core. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Immeasurable compassion. Just send that out to all the beings you like. You can also use this as a type of Tonglen meditation. So every exhalation you're offering this to perhaps one person you can think of, or maybe all living beings you can imagine. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were inseparable from the happiness that is beyond suffering. This is immeasurable joy. Let's offer that to all the beings we can imagine. And lastly, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in a state of perfect bliss, blissful equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Just send this out to all these people. Immeasurable equanimity. And just think, may I cause all sentient beings to abide in this way? May I myself abide in this way. So please reflect that we would like to engage in a spiritual path. And we have been fortunate to come in contact with some spiritual teachings. Fantastic. But it does seem like there's a lot of problems and challenges on the planet, and even in your own life. So just think, if I'm not able to transform these problems, and if I can't transform them into the path, I'm just going to keep making the same mistakes again and again and again that will lend to overwhelm, that I'll get depressed, I'll get anxious. So we have to try our best. So as we did last week, I would like you to think about, bring to mind, please, the biggest problem in your life right now. Could be health related, could be related to somebody in your family, your child, your partner, relationship issues, work issues, money issues. Okay? Be specific. And allow your mind to feel very strongly, feel strongly the mind that's thinking of this thing as a problem. Can you get a sense of your mind, your consciousness, holding around this issue? This is a problem. See if you can notice that. Notice tightening you might have around the problem, discomfort, how you just wish you didn't have this problem. You just want it out of your life forever. To really get a sense of that problem. And the more you can feel it and feel the mind that holds it as a problem, it's more effective in this meditation. So we're going to approach this problem now with emptiness, this very profound notion of how things exist, the nature of reality, basically. So please ask yourself, in relation to this problem, why is this a problem? And let's approach and analyze from a series of questions. Was it a problem an hour ago, or a month ago, or a year ago? And when in your mind did you start to perceive or label it problem? Is it possible that somebody else in the story has a different perspective and doesn't see it as a problem at all? Is that the case? Is the problem real, lasting, and permanent? So I'm going to ask you to examine from these different viewpoints and also asking yourself, where exactly is the problem? Can you locate it? So I'd like you to spend some time examining these components, these questions I just asked, and the components that solidify problem in your mind around the situation. Like, for instance, what do you notice with your sense consciousness around the problem? The sights, the sounds, smells, tastes, like that. What are the sensations? Including how your mind labels problem. Was there a problem before my mind labeled problem? Take a few minutes, just explore as best as you can. See if you can pinpoint the real identity of the problem. And even think of the word problem over and over. You can even recite it like a mantra. Problem, problem, problem. It just sounds, isn't it? Just the word. Does it mean anything in and of itself? And if at all the problem begins to dissolve a bit from your questioning again from every angle, like when I said, when in your mind did you start to perceive and label the situation problem? Was it a problem a year ago? Is the problem permanent and lasting and real? Where exactly is the problem? So if you come where it starts dissolving and you can't really find the problem as you're examining, just allow your mind to rest in this absence of a solid, real, findable problem. So again, if you come to the absence, an absence of a solid, real, findable problem, allow your mind to focus there on the absence, the not finding, the no problem. When it fades, go back and analyze again a little more quickly to see if you can come to that absence, keeping your concentration there as long as you can. And see if you can make a determination right now to try in the future to keep yourself away from this self-pity mind that wants to keep you trapped in these problems. Okay, trapped like this in the suffering of believing in the appearance of problems as problems. Problems can be happiness and the causes of happiness in disguise. So again, make a determination. I'm not going to get stuck in that self-pity habitual mind that problems are suffering. That I believe in the appearance of problems as suffering. And just reflect that by remembering the limitations of samsara, by remembering bodhicitta, this wish to benefit all others, by remembering karma, that events have taken place in the past with my body, speech, and mind that are simply right now projecting onto this reality, arising in this reality, something unfortunate. I don't need to concretize it any more than that. And just feel that I'm going to work by remembering these qualities of the Dharma, of the teachings. I will transform. I'm going to work to transform the appearance of problems into happiness, the appearance of problems into happiness. Think about the word appearance. So please relax. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. So a key component is to deal with your problems with emptiness. One of the best ways to deal with your problems. So there was a lot going on in the meditation, and some people might be new to emptiness. That's okay. But it's the best way to short circuit the problems as problems. Okay. So let's review a little bit. Let's look at this a little more closely, because I really want to talk about emptiness a bit tonight. It's a key part of dealing with all these problems. This appearance, okay? And I love when the meditation, this is right directly from the meditation. So please try to do this meditation this week for the rest of the class as well, with using emptiness to transform the problem. So that meditation is broken down into parts. It's meditation 2. Transforming problems into happiness, right? And so the beginning, we talked about renunciation. We were dealing with renunciation, samsara's nature. And there's another component of it that deals with guru devotion, your relationship with your teacher. Not everybody here has a teacher, but you can explore that in the meditation. Okay? But in dealing with emptiness, fantastic component, because it's the thing that cuts all of our suffering anyway. Emptiness, this nature of reality. So I love the part where it goes into the mantra, like I have a problem. So and you remember there were times when different language things get happening where people feel, remember the years of everybody was burnt out. I'm burnt out. You'd hear people, be working with people. How are you doing? I'm really burnt out by that. Really, So that was just a phrase that people were coining and using a lot of. Then it kind of shifted in another decade. It was everybody was overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed, really overwhelmed. Okay. These are just words. Okay. Now I find people, there's maybe it's just me, but I'm around a lot of people. And when I say, how are you doing? I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. Right? Well, frankly, I'm bored. I'm bored by I'm exhausted. If I hear one more person tell me they're exhausted, I want to say to them, well, get some rest. You're exhausted. Okay. But we have these terms. And one day, and actually I was here at Land of Medicine Buddha many years ago. There was another director who came in, and the center's always been kind of a big, overwhelming kind of place for new directors. It's like, and this guy came in, he's a lovely guy. And people were, and so they welcomed him, and they had a lot of people in the meditation hall, and then they let him speak. How are you doing? What do you think? And he said, well, everybody's asking me if I'm overwhelmed, taking on this new position. And he said, he goes, I'm not really overwhelmed. He said, I'm just whelmed. And it was great because it really cut the word for me. It's just a word. Like you could change the word up. So we get this problem mantra. Okay. But think about it, it's just a word. Different words we use. Okay. Now, granted, you're going to say, yes, but I have a negative situation in my life. Okay. And then I label that negative situation problem. Okay. So I understand that. I understand there is something you need to deal with. But did it help at all in the meditation to start coming from these different angles to kind of say, well, where is the problem? I really like when I think about, was it a problem a year ago? Right? No, you might say, well, a year ago I had a different problem, right? But that's what changes up the problem right now for me. Right? I did have a different problem a year ago. Right? I wasn't even here at Land of Medicine Buddha. There were different things. Then I got to Land of Medicine Buddha. Then there was those sort of problems, right? And then 6 months ago, I had different problems here. And then I really had this thing about looking at these problems, and I went, I'm tired of suffering, right? Okay. The pain comes up in life in samsara. There's going to be pain. That's what samsaric life is, okay? Suffering is your choice, though. Pain is there, but whether you want to suffer with it or not is completely based on your attitude. Okay? So look at how we tighten around problems too. And then look at how we solidify the problems. So this is all about just different thinking, that reality doesn't exist at all the way it appears to us. Okay? It does exist there, okay? But not in any inherently, concretely unchanging way. But that's what we impute on it. That's what we impute on it. And recently I was with family, and I was with some old friends and different things, and even newer friends. And I noticed, and I lately was talking to some people here about a class we were talking about doing. And then I just was talking about change. And I just going to ask all of you right now, how are you with change? How does it work with you? Pretty good with change, pretty fluid? Okay, some people are turning their heads like this, right? So I came into this room recently with a bunch of people, and I mentioned the word change, and I said, yeah, well, and I said, and I threw it out like very casual. I just said, well, yeah, it's just about change. And then I could feel 3 of them just totally constricted. 3 of them went like, well, and then 2 other people said, well, I don't really like change. Yeah. Well, good luck with that. Because that's all that this is about. Things are always changing. It's the only thing you can count on. So if you want to solidify right there, there's one problem. We don't want anything to change. A lot of people don't. Doesn't that get boring? Oh my goodness. Right? So it's interesting, but it's interesting. I look at my own mind around certain changes and certain things. And so again, your fluidity, and you see people that don't mind change at all. It's, I've been out with people, and you go out dinner plans, and sometimes you're with a group of people, and you're all going to go to this restaurant. I've seen this so many times, especially like Dharma trips. We're all going to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I see Carol laughing because she's been on some of the rides with me, I think, right? We're all going to go to this, you're all going to go to this nightclub tonight. We're going to go to this restaurant. We're going to a concert. We're going to this show. I'm taking a trip to Italy. You're doing whatever you're doing, and something changes. And so I lead pilgrimages, and I just got in touch because we're talking about our Laudo pilgrimage next spring, 2023, April, May. We're setting dates now. You can join us if you like. But anyway, we're talking about this pilgrimage. And I notice every time I'm on pilgrimage, there's like 20 people. Gina was there with us, the last one. She was an incredible trooper. One of my favorite people on the pilgrimage. So we're on the pilgrimage and things change on the pilgrimage, right, Gina? I mean, things didn't always go the way we wanted. And the people that could just roll with it had a much better time than the people that were like, this isn't working for me. Now, we actually had a really great group, but I've been on other pilgrimages where somebody's just not adapting and they hang out in that space and then they're really, really miserable. Doesn't need to be you. So please think about the way you're interacting with your reality. Think about the projections of solidity you're putting on your reality, projections of permanence, okay? That things are not going to change. It will always be like this. And think about your problems like that. Was it a problem a month ago? But I'm talking about your specific problem. I'm not talking about another problem. This specific thing you're worried about right now is molting and changing every single moment. Okay? The amount you want to project and solidify concreteness onto it will make it a bigger problem. You're constructing that problem. The more you want to tighten around it, the more you want to not see the fluidity of it. I love the whole idea of how, isn't it interesting that somebody else doesn't see this as a problem? You know, and you say, what? This is a problem. Like that. I mean, I could talk about the money problems of Land of Medicine Buddha. I'd really rather not, but I could. But, you know, you can say, well, you know, reality is if you don't have the money, you can't do this and that. But then as a result, I find these two managers based on, we decided, let's wait on hiring a director because the people that, you know, to be a director and what we were asking, they needed a lot of money to do the job. So instead we kind of pedaled back a little bit and said, well, what if we find a couple of managers where we can hire them at a different level? So legally we're not bound to offer this salary like that, we can do it. And then by asking them and getting creative, how much do you need to do this job? We found two delightful people that I'm very excited to work with. So again, creativity, you know, you can innovate, and rather than just being stuck in, well, we don't have the money to hire a director. Isn't that awful? Terrible. You know, then you get creative because we didn't hold the problem and just stick with it. We had to think about, well, what else can we do? What are the options? That. So there's a lot of possibility there. Any questions about that? Comments? So please, what I'd love you to do this week, and I'll take more questions if you have, but I'd really want you to keep working with your problem you brought up in the meditation. Please keep trying to do the meditation in relation to the problem or bring up another problem. And keep working from the angle of how does the problem appear to me? Appear, okay? Look how I'm labeling it problem. You know, have I had other problems like this? Is everybody viewing this as a problem? How come that guy has a different perspective on this and is seeing something kind of an opportunity here like that? So many different ways to look at it. So please keep using that in everyday life when something arises in your mind and you go, oh no, not this. And then why don't you use karma, the relation? Maybe I created the cause for this to happen. That's what Buddhism says. Comes from your mind. You know, does it come from somebody else? It might look like it's that person. Okay. I like where Buddhism takes ownership. My mind's creating this. My mind's creating the negative person. So I can be rude to them. Okay. And that's going to create yet another moment of rudeness arising for me in my mind that I don't like. Okay. Or I can kind of take ownership that it's coming from my mind. Like that. And then do the work there, coming from my mind. Okay, so what I need to do with kindness, okay, with creativity, work with this person and find a harmonious solution. That's our job on the planet right now. Every one of us. I don't care if you're Buddhist or not. Every one of us. And what I find is one of the strongest ways I like to do it, and this is just everyday life. This isn't any mystical, you know, thing of I've been meditating on emptiness for 50 years. No. This is just trying to create healthy relationships with everybody you encounter. Create a healthy relationship with someone, you ultimately can maybe call them a friend or move into that category with them, then we're much more likely to help each other with stuff. That's what we do for friends, like that. So how can you create that? Get creative. How can you create that healthy relationship with somebody? And it even starts with small things. Small things. You're in the supermarket with somebody. You're in a market. You know, how do I view the person checking me out? How do I view the person stocking the shelves? Do I see them? Can I smile just them? Even if I have a mask, can I just have a, I'm just passing somebody in the aisle. Can I make it pleasant? As opposed to like, get out of my way, I'm in a hurry. Can I be in space like that with all the beings? When I'm driving, walking down the street, anybody you encounter, can I have that bubble, soft, cushiony bubble around me of harmony, okay, loving kindness? That. We really need to do that on the planet. We try our best. Okay, let's look at some additional verses. Verse 4 is where we're starting. Oh, and one thing I wanted to read from the readings. Let's see, where am I here? Here we go. I love this this is one of the second readings, Mahayana Thought Transformation from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. This is one of our required readings that is in your materials. Mahayana Thought Transformation. It starts in the required readings, page 17, if you're interested, but Rinpoche talks about these thought transformation teachings are condensed in these 8 verses that we're talking about. And if you put the meaning of the 8 verses, Rinpoche says, into action, okay, into everyday life, nothing distracts you from spiritual practice, okay? So you're always kind of looking at whatever you receive, all the good things that you're receiving, okay, all the good things that you have is all reliant on other beings. Like if I just have that mindset, and it's a great mindset to go out with every day. Seriously, there's times I remember somehow I got into this heavily in the pandemic. I was less busy, so I could watch my mind more. I was less busy, okay? And what I noticed is I was living in my parents' house, my childhood home, okay? A simple home. It's not any fancy home or anything, but I just remember at times, like I'd be in the shower. You're taking a shower. Do you ever really appreciate, you just flip a switch and you got a beautiful hot water shower. Plenty of hot water. I could get clean really easily because I've been in places. Peggy's been to Laudo. I was up there once with Peggy, who's here at the teachings. Laudo's a remote place where I'm going to lead this pilgrimage next year near Mount Everest. So there's no hot showers there. It's always been an issue getting clean there, especially before I was a nun and I had long hair. It was always such a hassle to try to wash yourself and, in like a little bucket of water or something, and so I'd be in my parents' shower and I'd just be like, thank you for that. Like something so simple of just having an easy way to like cook an egg or something, or water right out of the tap. Or do you ever just get into the appreciation of it? Everyday things. Okay. So there's always something good that basically appreciating that, but all of these things are reliant on other beings. If I think of that, the only way, and I sometimes would think about, in the shower and I'd be like, thanks, Mom and Dad, for buying this house, for raising us in this house. Thank you for choosing a house in this community, safe, relatively easy community, nothing special, like just all of these things. You go into the store to buy food. I find personally the way in our Western supermarkets, oh my goodness, the food's arranged very nicely, very easily arranged for us to get. It's not behind some counter where I remember one time coming back from Laudo near Mount Everest, coming down, I had run out of toothpaste and I ended up in the first bigger trekking village, which, I'm not talking about a city. It's like a primitive trekking village, but finally a shop that might have toothpaste. They did sell toothpaste. And I went in and you asked for toothpaste. It wasn't, now Nepal, it's a little bit more modernized. So you can actually go into a shop and you can select. but then it was always behind the counter. And what happened is when I said, do you have any toothpaste? The guy handed me one tube of toothpaste. It was the only tube they had in the entire store. And I think it had been there for like 6 years. It was like hard as a rock. He's like, here. So all of these things that we have in the West at our ease comes because of other beings. So if I can keep that in my mind, it's immediately a problem sorter. Like instead of complaining, they didn't have my toothpaste today. It's like all these toothpaste they have. Okay. All these different juices in the juice aisle or the cereal aisle or the whatever aisle you're in, you know, all these things and how they're displayed and stacked because of the kindness of someone else. Now you say, well, they wanted to make money, the store. You know, they don't have to display it like that. The little orange pyramids, like, you know, just in the way they have the little sprinkles on the water on the produce and stuff like that to keep it fresher. I mean, it's all because of the kindness of others, people. The fact that you drive on a paved road instead of having dust flying up every moment that the tire turns. So kind. So there's many ways you can go out in everyday life. Okay. And Rinpoche goes on to say, whenever something bad happens to the practitioner, okay, failure, disaster, some problem arises, okay, you're constantly looking to exchange yourself for others, okay, to renounce that problem, okay, renounce my self-cherishing that got this problem more accentuated for me, okay. So recognizing the problem comes from samsara, comes from my mind and samsara, okay. So I don't need to have a drama about it, an overshock of it. It's like, yeah, this is part of samsara, right? I have these problems, but can I direct my mind? Other people have these problems. Instead of just my problem, so many other people have these problems. So let me renounce my problem, but let me really renounce my self-cherishing so that I can think more about other people have these problems and just see how it works with your problem. It can be so helpful. Okay, let's look at some of the other verses. Verse 4. Whenever I see a being of wicked nature who is overwhelmed by heavy non-virtue and suffering, I hold them dear as if I discovered a precious treasure difficult to find. Okay, again, whenever I see a being of wicked nature who is overwhelmed by heavy non-virtue and suffering, I hold them dear as if I've discovered a precious treasure difficult to find. I just want to make sure I have the right, because there's different translations of this verse. And here's from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Whenever I see beings who are wicked in nature, same verse, and overwhelmed by violent negative actions and suffering, I shall hold such rare ones dear as if I found a precious treasure. So you're like, what? We see people do nasty things to people, doing things to yourself or your loved ones, okay? Wicked beings, when they say wicked beings, okay, we're particularly here singling out them as being rare and even more precious than other beings, okay? So who is it, who are these that are wicked? What does it mean? Okay, certain people, let's think about this, are so overwhelmed by powerful negative minds, powerful delusions, okay? So everybody shuns them. Everybody sees them as difficult. People don't want to be near them, okay? People don't want to work with them. Like that, we reject them. We talk about them behind their back. They are the shadow in a community, in a workplace, okay? Whoever has strong afflictions, okay, they're completely bound or held under the control of those negative minds. Those are wicked ones. That's what we're calling wicked ones. That they're just living. Their affliction makes it very hard and very rare for them to create any virtue. Okay, so their non-virtue becomes so strong and powerful. Okay, so we know that what lies ahead of them is a lot of suffering. Okay, look at Putin. Okay, I mentioned last week, to me, he's a confused person. To think it's okay to invade somebody else's country and create so much destruction and death, that is a way to be on the planet comes to me as utter confusion, ignorance. Okay. Well, the thing is, we all have ignorance as long as you're a sentient being. As long as you're someone who hasn't had a direct perception of emptiness yet, okay, then you're a sentient being. You're not an Arya being. Arya means you've had a direct perception of emptiness. You've seen the truth directly, okay? And what they say is then you become an Arya being. So that's not us, if you haven't had a direct perception of emptiness. So in a sense, Putin's ignorance, well, I share the same ignorance, but you might say, I don't have it to the extreme that he has it, that confusion, okay? So why wouldn't you have more compassion for him? He suffers so much more greatly than me because of the deeper level, and I'll put it this way, the heavier veils of obscuration around his Buddha nature, the deeper and thicker his delusions. But the thing is, we all have the same ignorance and suffering. We all experience that, not to the degree that he does, that we're going to go harm somebody because of it. So the fact that he then decides to choose harm, destruction, killing people, ordering armies to kill people, think of what he's doing to his own mind. So Buddhism talks about reincarnation. It also talks about karma. He is creating immense suffering for himself. So this is one of wicked nature, but it's all based on the level of his delusions. Why wouldn't we have more compassion for him? So this verse goes on, and rather than selfishly thinking that I'm uncomfortable around these beings, rather than thinking I can sit at home and hate Putin, right? But instead of doing that, because that holds me hostage, for me to hate, he doesn't know I hate him, but it constricts my heart. It constricts the spaciousness of my mind, okay? Why don't I change my attitude to see what their situation is? Okay, again, turning the thing, cherishing others, thinking of their situation first, thinking of them first. Okay? Complete antidote to self-cherishing. This is where your happiness is, okay? So what would it be like? What would it be like to be him? What would it be like him creating incredibly heavy negative karma, creating immense disturbance in his mind, okay? And look at how it's backfired. He thought this war was going to be over in 3 days. I think the world thought that. Invades Ukraine, it will be over in 3 days. Hasn't happened at all. Totally going bonkers on him. It's totally gone the other way. Now the entire world's against him, pretty much, except, a few allies, right? So you wouldn't, I think, have any violent actions if you didn't suffer from heavy delusion, okay? So it says, those who are overwhelmed by suffering, in the verse, those who are overwhelmed by suffering. Generally, people don't want to be bothered, think about it, by anybody else's suffering. We prefer to avoid them. Okay? These people are not suffering from anger particularly, but more overwhelmed with the results of their own heavy karma accumulated in the past. So think about what he's created in the past in his mind. I'm just using him as an example, okay? And then it causes him to think, I need these other countries. I want to invade these other countries. And he controls these vast armies of young men that he has the control to send them into war to their own death and destruction. It's really heavy stuff, okay? So when you understand the disadvantage they have, you see how hard it would be for him to do any good, to behave well in a situation like that. And it could just be a coworker. When you realize how lost they are in their own mind, their own self-absorption, what their mind has created from before, okay? Why would we blame them? I also have ignorance. It causes me to make mistakes and do stupid things. Okay? They have a heavier level of it. Now, I'm not getting into a judgmental thing of like, well, I'm better than them, because the verses before were about countering pride. Okay, so we're working on these things. So I don't want to I'm coming from humility, and I'm realizing, well, I have some of these things in my mind, but how can I expect them to do any better, this person? But what I want to do is I want to avoid them. But that's absolutely not what these verses want to do, okay? We want to cherish them even more. Okay? So with somebody like this who's so difficult, and they use the word wicked. Wicked's really like a nasty word. Somebody who faces so much rejection, okay? It's quite shameful if we think they're too sick, they're too needy, too badly behaved for my time and effort, okay? It's not only that attitude that's really a shame, okay? In addition to being worthy of our compassion, this person be seen as somebody extremely precious. Okay? We can train to see them that way. We can train to see them that way. It makes you happier, for one. It makes you happier, okay? Because if we ourselves can develop compassion and love for beings like that, okay, then it's really easy for us to do it for all living beings. If you're really working with this most difficult person, okay, because these people are the hardest cases, okay? They're very precious to develop love and compassion towards, okay, because they're the hardest cases. So if I can get my mind exercised like that around the hardest cases, huge space of mind for all these living beings. If I can develop towards them, okay, then the love and compassion I want to feel for others, even easier, even easier. So when you're trying to generate compassion for somebody who has chronic pain, let's say, for somebody who has chronic illness, okay, we might not have any personal experience to draw on ourselves, okay, but by remembering experience of your temporary pain, some overwhelming pain you may have had for a short time, okay, then I can put myself in their position. Then I can put myself in their position. Can you remember when some afflictions or suffering arose in your mind? Okay. You were ostracized. You were rejected. You were cast out. Okay. Then you understand how they feel. You see how trapped they are. Okay. If we're able to put ourselves in that position like that. Make sense? Are we communicating? This is powerful stuff, because this is the stuff that hooks us. You know, there's some person out there and we go, I don't like them. Okay, well, there's that wicked person. That's our job. I don't need that in my mind. I don't like them. I don't want to be around them. Can't help them. Okay, so you'll feel so much freer, so much happier. Again, put yourself in their position. And for Buddhists, like, we have all these people we work with. Okay, so some years ago, honestly, and this is how you really look at emptiness and you go, whoa, okay. There was a president, George W. Bush. We all remember him. Now, when he was elected, it was kind of a moment, the first election, when he ran against Gore. And I think I was living in Vajrapani at the time. And it seemed a little bit like the election was irregular and that it wasn't really clear who won. There was a big debate and it went to the Supreme Court in Florida, I think, and about the hanging chads. We all remember that. Okay. So then he was selected as the president. And all the liberals and all the progressives hated it and said, oh, the election was stolen and what a joke. And he's horrible and he's horrible and he's horrible and he's horrible. Okay. So we used him as an object for many years to do different mind training work with. Okay, great. Then Trump got elected, remember? Different presidents, past presidents, showed up for the inauguration, right? If you remember that. I don't even remember if I watched the inauguration. I don't think so, but there were different things there was something about I think I was watching with my father, the TV, he had the news on or something. And there was a flash to George W. Bush. And there he was, something. And I remember when I saw him in my mind, I thought, well, he's not really so bad. Like how it shifted for me. Okay, in the face of somebody else. So everything's relative. So why do I need to hold in my heart this concrete wickedness, evilness about this person that once again holds me hostage, keeps me from being spacious and happy? If I can regard all beings, but again, I'm going to try to really cherish this difficult person even more. Why? Because they need it more. They need it more, but it's good for my mind. It's good for my mind. Putin doesn't know that I'm trying to cherish him and seeing him as precious. He doesn't know that. Okay, but it subdues my mind, softens my mind of creating yet another habit of adversity towards someone, hatred, anger towards someone. I don't need that in my mind anymore. I don't need those imprints in my mind. So we have to start working on it. We try our best to work on it. It's not easy. And often, if you notice, for instance, we have terrorists on the planet, well, people we label terrorists, there's murderers as well. Okay. And if you learn about the early life of a murderer, you can see with many of them how many difficulties they had in childhood in their lives. You know, no opportunities in their lives. What influences they were raised around, like that. So the worst thing we can do is add to their rejection by continuing to dislike, thinking they're too difficult to help, that they're so annoying to be around. Let me get with my workmates and let's talk about them negatively. Like, it has no benefit at all. Okay. And here's the other thing is, without depending on them, enlightenment is impossible. Bodhicitta is impossible. You never get to experience the fact of them being a precious, rare treasure. So now I'm not talking about like, I'm going to approach every murderer and stand in a dark alley with them. I mean, come on. Like that doesn't, but this is about my attitude towards them. You have to use your wisdom as well. So you're not going to put yourself in the face of danger, but it's my attitude towards these people. I can still generate compassion. I can still think about everybody is absolutely worthy, okay, of our respect, equal regard in our minds. Everybody has the potential to become a Buddha. And even the most difficult people, they give my mind more ability to exercise, to practice patience, compassion, generosity, right? Ethical conduct, joyous effort, with all of those beings, especially the most difficult ones. So I need them to get enlightened. I need these beings. That's why they're so precious. Okay. If it's possible, then in everyday life, let's say you have this difficult person, okay? Try to find a realistic way to relate to them. Not always easy. You want to win their trust. You want to find a way to strike up a friendship with them, okay? By remembering their unique importance, okay? If it's possible, because once again, creating those healthy relations, because with a friend, when they become a friend, my life gets easier. My mind is more spacious and happy, okay? So I'll give you an example. I've mentioned this before in other classes. Some of you have heard this story before, but I worked for Mother Jones magazine. Some of you know that, in San Francisco many years ago. We had like a 30-person office. There was a guy, I was the new person hired, and there was a guy I could tell in the first 2 weeks that nobody liked him. Nobody liked him. And we had an open air office, and I could hear him kind of grumbling to people and yelling at people. And I had to do something with him, and I got very intimidated and nervous and all this. And so I was a new Buddhist at the time. I wasn't even a Buddhist, but I was going to Vajrapani from the city. We didn't have Ling yet. It didn't exist. And I was trying to put these Buddhist things into practice, but I didn't know much about Buddhism. But I did hear about the Bodhisattva path, this path of somebody who's developed bodhicitta. So Bodhisattva is like a Buddhist saint. I think of like a spiritual warrior, right? And you're not going to war with anyone. You're going to war with your delusions, okay? So I'd heard about how bodhisattvas would know kind of about you. Like they would learn, do you drink tea or coffee? And they'd know exactly how you take your tea or coffee. This is an example they gave one of the classes. So I kind of did a little exercise for 2 weeks in my 30-person office to try to see if I could remember what everybody drank in the office. And maybe once in a while I could make them a cup of coffee or buy them a soda of what they liked, and just as a little treat. So that was my own little exercise. But coming in contact with this difficult person, I remember being so intimidated and thinking, I've got to find some way to work with this person. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Nobody likes them. But what I decided to do was I was going to work it through what they drank. So it took me like a week or two to figure out they drink coffee, cream, no sugar. I figured that out, learned that. And then I wanted to get them a cup of coffee genuinely. Like I'd bring it to a friend. Like I'd go by your office and go, you want a cup of coffee? And then I'd make a really nice cup of coffee. But it took me another 2 weeks to find the right moment because I had to be in their office for something, notice the coffee cup empty, and find the right moment to do it. So I was very nervous about this thing because the person was so ornery. Okay. So one day it all came together and there I was in the office with them, handed them a piece of paper. Here you go. I see the coffee cup empty. And I had my coffee cup in my hand. I wanted to make it natural. I'm going to get coffee. Here I am. I looked down and then I said to them, oh, I'm going to get some coffee. Would you like some coffee? Cream, no sugar, right? So that disarmed them right away, that I knew how they took their coffee, right? So now they're kind of, I mean, I was nervous, so I was stuttering. I remember that. But they were suddenly like, like somebody noticed them for some reason, whatever. And somehow, fortunately, the guy agreed and said, okay, yes, handed me the cup. Yes, yeah, okay. He was very uncertain because no one had ever gotten him a cup of coffee, I don't think, in the office. And so then he handed me the coffee and said, very haltingly, okay. So off I went to make a cup of coffee. I made a really nice cup of coffee. Okay. I mean, you want to make a nice cup of coffee. You're not putting salt in the coffee. Okay. You make a nice cup of coffee. Okay. Just like I'd make it for any of you. And I came back and no big deal. I just came back by his office, my cup. I just went in, just put it down and said, there you go. That's it, and left. I mean, you don't come back with like, I made you the best cup of coffee. No, you just put it in there. No big deal. Leave. That was it. After that, we were friends. I'm not kidding. He had never had anybody do anything kind for him in the office. He was a little bit like a chained up dog. If you chain an animal like that and then you try to approach them, they get scared. And then I found out more about his upbringing and how he was bashed by his mother and how it was just over and over emotionally bashed and how he didn't trust anybody. And then he would get into kind of this corner, and anybody that came in, he felt threatened. So he would growl and bark at them like that. So somehow, suddenly, one cup of coffee. So everybody in the office, slowly people noticed how we were working on this project and we were doing great. And because it's an open air office, they heard us in there laughing together and working on this thing and joking around. And people started saying to me later, what's the deal? Like, what are you doing with him? How did you, like, he likes you. I'm not anybody special. And really was like some mystical thing. I had come through some kind of vortex. And they said, what did you do? And I said, I got him a cup of coffee. Like that was they were like, oh, they hadn't thought. They're like, get him a cup of coffee. What a concept. This is simple. This is simple stuff. So let's find something realistic. I've done this many times with people that I felt kind of afraid of, and they were rude and they were angry and they repelled everybody and nobody liked them, and is compliment them genuinely on an article of their clothing or their appearance. But it has to be genuine. You can't do false flattery. Really come in with like, nice shirt and make it very natural and no big deal. Oh, did you get your hair cut? It looks really good. I like your shoes. Because people don't approach those people in that way. They approach them with detestation, right? So just a genuine thing can just bridge that. Suddenly they look at you like, oh, she said something nice to me. Well, I'm gonna go check in with her again because she said something nice to me. That's how it works. It's not magic at all. But what happens is we're used to these workplaces where we get into these modes, and then because everybody has an agreement that this person's evil, and then we just get right into it with them. Verse 5. This is a very powerful verse. This is very famous of the 8 verses, okay? When out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. Again, when out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. How we normally feel when we're criticized or mistreated, okay? It's like we're lost in some way. We want to argue back and claim victory. Now, sometimes you feel like I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong, okay? But this is a way to create harmony and deflect the conflict between people, okay? We always, though, want to have the last word. But I was right. Why do I have to say that, you know? So just think, this is a huge space. Huge space. You know, normally it would be like, if others mistreat me with abuse, you know, I'm going to have a stinging response to them. Okay. And then where do you get? Again, alienated. Okay. So in worldly terms, if somebody's accepting defeat and offering the victory to others, some people might see that as weakness. Okay. From the point of view of really trying to develop spiritual qualities, accepting defeat and offering the victory to others needs to come from a sincere place. Okay, I'm trying to work on my own negative mind. Okay, so therefore it's irrelevant what other people think, whether it's good or not. You know, for me, it's all about creating the harmony and countering, diffusing, and dismantling conflict on the planet over and over and over. So we're going to talk about this more also next week. But one thing I just wanted to say in closing, and I know that, so at our centers, I mentioned this story before, but when we have retreat centers and people come, but you have city centers. I've talked to several of you about your role in city centers, working at city centers, and people come in and some people can be annoying. Let's face it, some people can be irritating. Right? So, you know, you have a view of them, and then somebody, and you have a management team, let's say you have a board, and you disagree with somebody. And then somebody's holding to their view, and then somebody you feel, you know, does something without discussing with you that you think interferes with the program of the center or interferes with what the plan for the center is. So we get angry. You know, I don't want to offer them the victory. Okay. We had a woman that came to our center years ago, residential, stayed for 3 weeks in a cabin, was very difficult with the staff. At the end, angry, wanted her money back, like railed at every staff member, how horrible they were, and demanded to see the director. So that was me at the time. So she came into my office, I could just feel all this rage, anger, misery, right? So I sincerely apologized to her. She didn't expect that, but I sincerely apologized. I didn't personally feel we did anything wrong. I know our staff, they were fantastic. They told me, you know, every few days what was going on with her. Everything was wrong. Every meal was wrong. Everything that they got her was wrong. You know, so I just apologized, and I really sincerely apologized because I felt bad that we couldn't meet her expectation. I felt bad she had an expectation to begin with, but that we could not meet the expectation, and that she just didn't have a good time, a good experience, period. Whether we did anything wrong or not, but I just thought, I'm going to own it, diffuse this. I am so sorry, and I really genuinely was sorry. Apologize. And when somebody apologizes, it's really hard to hang on there and just keep kicking them in the ribs when they're down. So she wanted to fight, but because I so profusely apologized, offered her money back after 3 weeks, which is a lot of money. I remember her sitting in the chair across from my desk, kind of like she wanted to fight. She was hoping I'd be like, well, this is how it is, and nothing to fight with. There was nothing to fight with. So somehow she just sat there, and then somehow I asked her about where she was from, and we had something in common there. We knew something, and then we just started a conversation, and then it became very pleasant, trying to get into her experience, just diffusing things. And then somehow this very nice conversation followed to the point where she backtracked, she's so sorry, whatever, and then didn't want her money back, and then made a donation to the center. Again, but it was more about just diffusing the whole anger that's out there. So it's a huge one. Please think about that and think about verses 4 and 5 this week. Can you work with them this week in your mind when you're encountering negative people? Any last questions? These are huge verses, 4 and 5, major verses of the eight verses. I can't believe it's 7:30 already. What happened? Okay, that was quick. Anyway, it's lovely to see all of you. We're going to dedicate the merit. I want to thank all of you for showing up and say Chen Ling. So again, please, homework is continue the readings. Please do the meditation number 2. Again, do it slowly. This is transforming problems into happiness. Okay, focus on the emptiness part. Over and over, where is that problem? How does the problem manifest? Was it a problem a year ago? Do other people see it as a problem? Can you continue to chip away at that problem over and over? Okay, and then reflect please on verses 4 and 5. See if you can do these exercises in your mind. What would you like to do? Are you cherishing the other person as if they're precious? Do you see that you need these beings to transform your mind to get enlightened? Okay, so everybody's easy again. I don't really get to practice patience. Thank you. Let's invest. Thank you, Gina, for the dedication prayers. Whatever merit we've created from our time together, whatever positive energy, can we invest it in our really using these versus this lojong practice, mind training, to transform, to polish that jewel of our minds so that we can quickly get enlightened and benefit all living beings perfectly. I'd also like to dedicate to our sisters and brothers in Ukraine for that conflict to end as quickly as possible, and all other conflicts in the world, for all the ill to be healed instantly. Let's read in English. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. For the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's long life, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. So for the great flourishing of our centers, especially Chen Ling Center, and please pass the word. We're looking for a spiritual program coordinator, the job Gina's doing for Land of Medicine Buddha. So if anyone's interested, they can contact me. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful week.